Oh, there was an orb. There was a big orb just now. Hi,
On me or
Kara.
you?
We are live. Hi, Kara. How are you?
I am doing pretty good.
I'm so
Um,
excited tonight. How fun.
I
Chicago.
know.
Well, that was a big, that was a little orb that just flew across. You guys have to watch because the orbs will fly. Um,
Was it on
anyway,
you or me? That's what I got to ask.
you have to ask, I'm sorry, you have to ask what?
Was it on you or me? Because I was looking down for a second.
Now it's going across, and another one just went.
Okay.
Um, and a big one just went. So funny. So anyway, tonight Chicago Ghost Stories Part 2.
Yes.
And what were the little stories that we did last week?
Wow, you just had an orb on you.
Yeah.
We talked about the hauntings at Bachelor's Grove, the St. Valentine's Day massacre, and the hauntings that have gone through with the bricks. And then we talked about the Eastland disaster and all of the hauntings around the city that are attached to that specific disaster in 1915.
Oh my goodness. They, it's amazing that there are ghost stories everywhere, literally everywhere, in every country, everything. So tonight we have some really good stories that we're going to tell, and I want to ask everybody if they could share the show. Let's get some people in here to listen to these stories. And if you haven't liked or followed or subscribed, please go ahead and do that.
Yes,
I want to see all my YouTube people come in.
that would be fun.
That would be good.
I'm scooting back, people. I'm short. Sorry.
Ah. So anyway, we even have some photos to show you tonight. And here's a comment. Let's see. Every house that I ever lived in has been haunted. I think Kara's
Yes,
the same, right?
every single house that I can remember has been haunted.
Oh my goodness. And part of it, hi Brett.
Hi, Brett.
Let's make him famous.
Hi,
That's
Carlos.
my cousin Brett. Hi Brett.
Ah, hi, cousin
Brett, you're
Brett.
gonna love this. You are back east, and we're going to be doing Chicago ghost stories. Last week was part one. If you guys didn't see it, just go rewatch it because it was so interesting. And tonight is going to be really good. And I don't know if we have to start right now because I know we only have an hour. Kara, what do you
All right.
think?
Well, we have three stories, but if we can fill in time at the end, we do have an interesting fourth story that we're not going to have a picture up, but then again, I don't think there's any pictures of the building that survived anyways. But
Okay. So, do you want me to, you just let me know when you need a picture up.
okay, well, you can already, if you want to start with John Hancock, we can start with
Okay.
the John Hancock building. It's actually one of the most recognizable and iconic skyscrapers in the world. Um, but the history of the grounds actually is more interesting because it's where the curse originates. There was a man who used to run a ferry and ferry people across Lake Michigan, and his name was Cap Streeter. And when he ran aground on the Gold Coast area there, which is now Streeterville, um, he claimed, and bought some land for his own. He got into a big fight with the city of Chicago and the uh, city council, and he was fighting them until his dying breath. And the last thing that he said before he died was he cursed this ground that no one who lived or walked among it would ever be happy. The grounds would be cursed. Uh, Fast forward to the 19, I want to say 1930s. There started being, having bad things happen in the area. Of course, this was many years before the John Hancock Center was built. There's an interesting part to this too. In the 1930s, there were posh family homes up and down that area. And one of them was the home of the parents of a very infamous person, I'm sure many of you know, Anton LaVey, who was the founder and the creator of the Church of Satan. And when the John Hancock Center was being built, it started, I think, in 1965. It took 3 years to complete. As they were building it, the architect Bruce Graham chose to use a trapezoid design so that the lower floors could house large offices for companies and the higher floors would have smaller apartments. Anton LaVey believed that the design itself was a portal to evil, like a gateway to evil entities and just pure evil, which kind of leads to some of the things that have happened at the John Hancock Center. 3 years after the John Hancock Center was built, a young woman by the name of Lorraine Kowalski was visiting her boyfriend's apartment on the 90th floor. Somehow, her body broke through a window and she flew down to her death. It's unexplained. It's unexplained by the police department and by everyone else, because those windows are supposed to withstand 200 pounds of pressure and 150 to 200 mile an hour of gale force winds. Yet she fell into it and flew to her death.
Wow.
There's no rhyme or reason. There's no explanation. She's not the only one who it happened to. A few years later, a gentleman who was working, I believe it was the 97th floor, he was working for his television company. He flew out a window to his death.
Oh my gosh.
Shortly after that, another man fell from the 91st floor. All of these seemingly unexplained deaths have happened 90 and above. The jumping or the falling,
Right.
it usually happens above the 90th floor. That's not to say the rest of the building hasn't had issues. Some say or believe that, Poltergeist 3, was filmed there. And Heather O'Rourke became deathly ill after being in the Hancock Studios doing an interview to promote the movie, and passed away shortly thereafter.
She lived here.
Yes.
Yeah, she lived here and she passed away at Children's Hospital where my
Yes.
friend works. Yeah.
Yeah. She got ill at the Hancock Studios doing a promotion video for the film, and I don't know if it was a week later or two, but it was a short time later. She was rushed to the hospital where she lived, but now I know it was by you, and she passed away. It was unexplained how she could have gotten so ill so fast, or
Right.
why they didn't catch it before. But we also lost a famous comedian, Chris Farley, on I believe it was the 60th floor in
Oh
his
my
apartment. He died of a drug overdose in the front hallway of his apartment. One of the more recent things, which is very scary because they can't explain how it happened, was there was scaffolding outside the 43rd floor of the John Hancock Center. And the scaffolding somehow detached, went flying down. Yes, she was, Michelle. That was Dominique Dunn. But the scaffolding fell, and it landed on 3 cars, killed 3 women all at once, and injured 8 others. They can't explain how the scaffolding, how it came loose. They can't explain anything. But there's also been people who have felt things inside the building and the surrounding area, like an ominous presence. But it's hard. It's hard to understand, except when you do look at that strange structure and the And the way they built it in a trapezoid, I mean, could Anton LaVey have been right? Could that be a portal to something evil? Is that how people were thrown or jumped to their deaths or fell to their deaths from windows that shouldn't have even been able to open?
Right. And then it had that curse, you know.
Cap Streeter and his curse. He cursed the whole area.
That's a lot. That's a lot for one building. A lot of stuff. Especially you can't break that glass.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. 200 pounds of pressure and a young, thin, tiny little girl is going to bust through it. I mean, it makes no sense.
It seems like something helped her along.
I would say so. I would definitely say so. There's something in there. I have never felt the greatest. I've been into the restaurant. I think it's on the 95th floor. It's a revolving restaurant. I don't feel that comfortable in it. It's not like I'm afraid of heights or anything, but I just don't get the happy, fuzzy feelings being in there. You know, it's I don't know if anyone else here is from Chicago or if they've ever had an experience at the John Hancock Center, but it's an interesting place. Even the observation floors are, you know, they give you a little bit of a feeling, a dark feeling.
Oh wow. I wouldn't want to. Like if I'd say we're go have Chinese or something. Get it go in there. That's crazy. Oh my gosh. So that's pretty
Exactly.
haunted.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Even the picture you chose is ominous.
I know. I saw it and I went, well, I like that little cloud in there, that little
Yeah.
stuff
But
going
you see
on.
how they've designed it with those weird beams on the outside of the building
Yeah.
and all those, strange triangles within, in the trapezoid. It's just, doesn't give good. You handled that litigation really. Oh, that is sad. That you're talking about the scaffold, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
So,
That's
Michelle, your vibe, that theme of justice, you know, so that goes right with if you're working in legal. It's amazing.
yep,
She
she does.
did win a reading, so that was a lot of fun. Okay, we're finished with the
Okay.
Hancock.
We are. We are.
Mhm.
Even though it's scary, yeah, we're finished with it. I don't think I want to go in depth to any more of the stories because it's
Oh, I mean that's a lot. The thing is that the power behind the words, the intention that was put on the ground of that curse and all of that, and the Church of Satan. Oh my goodness.
yeah. And I've never seen another building with a trapezoid like that. I mean,
It is odd looking. It is
yeah,
very odd looking, like,
it is.
and to me, it's creepy. I go, I wouldn't want to choose to do anything in that building. I just don't
Let
like
alone
that.
have an apartment
No.
or have an office. No, that would be very
Yeah,
scary.
especially if the neighbors go flying out the windows. No,
Yeah,
we're not doing
I wouldn't
that.
want to see that. I definitely wouldn't want to see that.
um, what's the next photo going to be? I
Well,
want to
let's see if you found
set.
one. Jane Addams' Whole House. Did you find one of either Jane Addams or her Whole House?
Oh, I didn't, must not have seen that
That
on your list. I'm
that's
sorry.
oh no, that's fine. I mean, it's hard to I mean, you can find pictures of her, but unless you want pictures of it modern day as part of the university, I don't think you're going to find an original,
Mm.
I don't know if you'd find an original picture on the internet of the big mansion itself,
Oh
but it's
darn.
yeah, but it's okay. It's a good story, and the story really doesn't have to do with the building itself. It has to do with uh, the rumors and the superstitions of the immigrants who she helped.
Okay.
And so it's all become folklore now. We don't know if it's 100% true, if a devil baby was born in her facility. But Jane Addams was a wonderful woman, a pioneer. She was ahead of her time, and she is, I want to say, the founding mother of modern domestic violence shelters. She started it all by building a charity called Hull House, where she took in women, abused women and children, poor women and children who were either abandoned or didn't have a place. Oh, Michelle got a picture, it looks like.
I won't be able to show it because I have to make it into a PDF.
Yeah.
But I will get one and save one. Thank you, Michelle.
That'll be awesome. We could show it next week and say, here, this is what we were talking
You
about.
could be our personal assistant anytime.
That's what we need. That's what we need to hire her for. But the a lot of the women that she helped were immigrants. A majority were superstitious immigrants from Ireland and Italy, and mostly very Catholic. I'd say the majority, and it wasn't that she chose to just help Catholics. It was most of these people were immigrants, and at the time, those were the immigrants that were coming in from Ireland and from Italy and Scotland, and so the majority happened to be Catholic. Well, somehow a rumor got started that a young Italian woman showed up. You got orbs flying all over you. That's freaking me out.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just keep noticing them coming. This woman showed up, and she was 9 months pregnant, and she didn't have anywhere else to go. She had her other children in tow, and her husband apparently was an alcoholic, and he was upset that she was pregnant again, and he damned this child to hell, from what the legend is. And it said she had hours and hours of painful labor. And when the baby did come, the baby had a vestigial tail, horns, and its feet and hands were cloven like the hooves of an animal. Mm-hmm. Now, mind you, had this child really been born, it is quite possible from the father, maybe he was also a drug addict of doing something back then, some kind of opiate, because those were popular and they were readily available. It was legal. Maybe he took something with his alcohol, or maybe he was such a bad alcoholic that somehow the baby ended up deformed. Vestigial tails, they have found in many babies as a deformity. Mm-hmm. And horns could have been anything, any lumps or anything that had formed, calcium deposits, and the feet could have been deformed. But back then, that was a devil baby. It was the epitome of evil. And news media, people would show up there and ask to see the devil baby. And Jane Addams and her staff would say there's no such baby. And finally, the media, the newspapers and everything started hounding her. And she said, there's no baby born with any kind of devil, features or anything. And she tried to dispel it. But I'm wondering if something was born there, and maybe it's possible that it could have been a normal birth defect that they took as some kind of evil devil baby. And maybe she lied to the news media to protect the child. But strange occurrences have happened in Hull House. Even when they used it long after Hull House closed, the university used it a few times. They used to do a haunted house. And it was a haunted house for 18 and over, because they would have trapdoors and everything else and things that you would fall through and things. But people who worked there said that there was something watching them from the shadows. There were dark shadow figures and things. So whether it was a devil baby or not, something residual is in those walls. I mean, you got to think many women and children died there, either from, sickness, or even, maybe they were so starved by the time they came there that they just succumbed to starvation, before they got the actual help they needed.
So there was this building that has grief and, there might have been anger, mentally ill people, all kinds of stuff came in. When you start doing the haunted houses in them, it's very attractive. People are screaming their life out. I know this for a fact because when I was a teenager, I went to one, and I don't go to them anymore. But it was so scary that when the monstery people started coming for everybody, that I grabbed a woman and threw her in front of me, and I ran.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm not proud of that, but I did it.
It's
And
scary.
yeah, so there's a lot of attraction to that type of energy, the scaring, and any of the past things that were in there. So it is always wear some stuff that residual dark inky energy will hang, and I call it scrabblies. And then the more you get, the bigger the things are. It makes the shadow people. So it makes a lot of sense that
Yeah.
there's actually shadow people in there. That's just over the years. We go from a scrabbly that's just kind of not non-sentient and it's just hanging there, to more stuff coming on, globbing up until it likes to do stuff. I'm gonna go ahead
I
and
was going to say, there's
take that.
somebody to take that off.
I am. So go. Okay, so we got that one done.
Yeah. And now, mind you, I would be interested if I could get a hold of someone who actually does dealings in that, because it is, I believe, I think it's owned by the University of Chicago. Pretty sure. I should ask my niece. Um, but I'd be interested. Anyone who works in that building or does anything for the university, if they have any dealings with that building, I wonder if there were more current stories of hauntings. I'd like to get to the bottom of it and see if the residual energy is still there.
Well, and everybody, Michelle and Karen, our librarians for the night, have put great links up. So go look at. I'm going to go look it up too. But you know what? It takes being there and seeing what's going on, because if it's an imprint of energy, then something horrific that usually happens when somebody's doing the same thing every day, back and forth, putting the energy in there, something horrific happened in that room, usually stays in place.
Yeah.
Usually you're not going to see it somewhere outside or another floor. It's where it happened. Otherwise, if something's talking to you, if we can communicate with it, then it can be a spirit. Maybe they're just a looky-loo, or they're someone that died there and never went over to the other side. So lots of different things.
Yeah. And you got to think of how much pain was there. I mean, all these, a lot, like I said, a lot of the women that she took in were not just immigrants, but they were immigrants who were not only fleeing the poverty of their own country, but they were fleeing the abuse of their husbands. Back then, a woman couldn't go file for divorce.
Right.
It wasn't, it was, and men usually were the ones who were able to do it. And men were the ones who were able to get the kids. And the men were the one who were able to decide whether they wanted to support the wife after divorce. So what rights did they have? I mean, how much fear and anxiety and mental anguish is built up in those walls from the women who came there seeking help.
There's a lot of really sad stories of people having the spouse come back and murder them. And it happened in the town here, where I happened to have a family member that worked for the police department. And the lady was terrified, but they couldn't do anything but put in that little stay, I guess, if you can't be close to them or contact them. And so she just kept calling my sister and saying that, he's going to kill me. He's going to kill me. And they were tired of coming out there. And so she called one particular day and just said, I know he's going to kill me. And there's always a problem. I know a problem right now with someone who, um, and that we might discuss this before, didn't get notice that somebody got out. And so she knew he was out, and she called my sister, and I guess they were dragging their feet getting over there or whatever, and he indeed came and murdered his wife. So
Hi, Brenda.
any place like that, I can imagine that there's terrified people.
Yes.
And when women go to shelters, especially with their kids, they're terrified. They're so scared that, and now we have strict things where people don't know where the shelters are. So I used to donate all the time to my girlfriend that was a police officer to take personal care items in, and it was very, very confidential. Well, back then, maybe everybody knew that's the house they would go to.
It's possible. It's possible
Right.
because I mean, it's not like they had TV or anything like that. They didn't even have radios then. This was, way prior to everything. So it was word of mouth. It was, and a lot of times it wasn't even going to a police department because a woman back then, you could rape your wife over and over again and it wasn't a crime. You could beat your wife.
Yeah.
You could beat your wife and children as long as there were different things in Illinois that, criteria you could meet. You could horsewhip your child as long as you didn't make them bleed. I mean, there were so many things, but women did not have, if her husband came and punched her in the stomach and threw her down a flight of stairs, as long as he didn't kill her, he wasn't going to jail for domestic violence. There were no laws.
Right. Oh my goodness. Well, if you go there, I'll give you my book on protective magic, and you need to put some defensive things around you for sure.
Michelle and I are bringing sage and salt with us. That's for sure.
There you go. Well, I'll make some scrabbly juice for you.
Oh, that works
It's
too.
actually, it's sage and any kind of salt, and a wild rue seed, which is in Iran, and they have it and they use it for protection, like our sage, but it smells like chocolate. So
Oh.
get it. It smells just like chocolate.
Oh God, that'd be a bad thing for me. A chocoholic, diabetic can't handle the chocolate, but
You can't, you're not going to eat the seeds, but you can,
I'd be snorting it.
yeah. What the heck? Oh, wow. Okay. Some places not to go. Okay. Do we need another?
Well, I
photo?
think you have the picture of from Resurrection Cemetery. Unfortunately, the orb picture didn't work, but there you go.
And I also have a headstone,
which is from one of the women that they believe there's two possibilities. That one is a little is slightly unlikely, but I'll tell you why. But she is one of the forerunners for being Resurrection Mary. We're going to talk about, there we go, Mary Bregovi. She's one, but that's her mother. That's her mother's grave. Hers would be, she was born in, or died in 1934, her daughter, who's also Mary. But she would
right.
be, her daughter would be a contender. That's her mom's grave. But I digress. The story.
I'm sorry, I saw two headstones and they were both
No. It's her. Interesting enough, a lot of women were named. They would name their children just like a man names their child. John Jr. or Frederick Jr. They would do the same thing, especially immigrants. The daughter would carry on the mother's name.
My mom did that with my sister.
Yeah, it's very common. My daughter-in-law almost did that with their son. He was almost little Stevie Jr.
Oh.
But Resurrection Cemetery does have quite a few hauntings, but the most famous haunting is Resurrection Mary. So named because the ghost gets out of the vehicle and walks through the gates and disappears. But we'll explain why. back in the 1920s and 1930s, the Willowbrook Ballroom was actually the O. Henry Ballroom. And the two legends that surround Resurrection Mary, one is of a young girl by the name of, like you said, Mary Bergovi, who was out one night dancing, and she was going home, and she was actually killed in a car accident in the Chicago Loop, which is one of the reasons that they think that might not be her, even though she's buried at Resurrection. But she also died in 1934. And so that some of the hauntings of the girl in the white party dress and dancing shoes started in 1930. So that's why they're thinking maybe it's not her. But there's another girl, and her name was Anna Marge, which is, I guess, or Marge, kind of a Mary, and her last name was Norcus. And she died in 1927. She actually was at the O. Henry Ballroom with her boyfriend, and they got into an argument, and she stormed out and began walking home down Archer Avenue. And she was struck and killed by a hit and run driver who never stopped, just took off. And unfortunately, her parents are the ones who found her dead in the road. And they were so besides themselves with grief and despair that when they did bury her at Resurrection Cemetery, they buried her in a beautiful white dress, which was her favorite color, and dancing shoes. So the ghost that's seen, it's quite possible that it's her. It's usually men alone driving on Archer Avenue away from Willowbrook Ballroom, which I don't even know if it's still Willowbrook anymore now, but they would be driving towards Resurrection Cemetery, and there would be a very young girl in a party dress, basically looking for a ride, hitchhiking, not with the thumb out, but, just there. They would pick her up and she would get into the car, and she didn't say a lot, but she would stare out the window, and they'd ask her, where she wanted to go, and she'd say she wanted to go home. And then she would tell them to stop the car, and usually it was right outside of Resurrection Cemetery. And she'd get out, and she would walk to the gates and then walk through the gates and disappear. There was more than one man. I mean, there were a lot of men who reported this. Even taxi cab drivers back then reported this phenomenon. And it was, Archer Avenue was kind of a scary place to drive at night. I think I told you that my son and my niece and nephew and her ex and another friend of theirs, we decided to go ghost bunting around all the cemeteries while we were up there visiting. And we went to Resurrection Cemetery, and I know I sent you the picture and it didn't come out, but the picture I sent her, there must have been 50 or 100 orbs in this picture outside Resurrection Cemetery, which our cameras ended up shutting off. Our phones shut off. Nothing would come back on until we were away from that cemetery. It was
drains the batteries all the time. When we go paranormal investigating, we have to take packs of new batteries.
Yeah, it was very scary. But I mean, Resurrection Cemetery has a lot of scary things within the cemetery. And I mean, Chicago, just in general, a lot of our cemeteries are terrifyingly haunted. I think, I don't know if you were able to find the statue of Inez Clark.
I did. Did you like that one?
Yeah, that's an interesting.
This is part of what was really scary, is seeing some of this lady laying down, the white lady carved in stone. But let me bring you that one up, which was something. I mean, I spent time looking over different views that they had of this, because I was like, wow. And I have two. I think I have two of her. Let me just get this one. And
The
let me
eyes
tell you,
scare you on that one.
the whole thing, I'm telling you. I'm I'm gonna have to add it. So go ahead and talk.
Okay, well, this now I've got myself confused. I believe this is Graceland Cemetery. I have so many cemeteries on my mind, but Inez Clark was a little girl who died at 7 years old. There's been some speculation on who she was and how she died and if she was real. And part of the confusion is that her mother was remarried and her stepfather's name was uh, was Clark, I believe. I believe her birth name was Briggs, Bridggs. So if she was buried, she would have been buried under the name Briggs, not Clark. So there's where some of the confusion, as well as this monument is right next to the graves of the people who would have been her paternal grandparents or her, I'm sorry, maternal grandparents. So obviously, I believe she's real, that she was a real little girl and that she died. There's speculation as to how. One of the reasons that they said that she died is that her parents and she and her siblings were out having a picnic and a storm came in and she was struck by lightning and died. Some say that she was, see, isn't that parasol that everything is just so scary about that?
She's
And
got
I
a
believe
hat,
in that
everything.
hand, yeah, and I believe in her other hand she's holding a flower with the yeah, and then the parasol, very, very eerie.
Hmm.
But nonetheless, all the stories deal with her either dying of tuberculosis or being struck by lightning because either her parents locked her out on purpose as punishment in a storm, or she got accidentally locked out in a storm if she went outside for something, or it was a picnic they were having and the storm came in and she was struck by lightning. Um, but everyone believes that that's what happened to her, was either the tuberculosis or lightning. Now the odd thing is I think lightning is probably closer to the truth because a mist forms over this plastic or glass encasement that the statue is in. And when rainstorms and thunder and lightning start happening, the monument disappears. The little girl disappears on the monument, like she's hiding.
Oh my gosh.
It's like misted over, and there's no, and you can't see her anymore. It's almost like she's hiding, which is quite scary. But look at that face. I mean, it looks angelic, but it also looks tormented. If you know what I mean. It's like
The
she's
thing is that you guys can see the pattern of her dress. I mean, this
yeah,
must have cost a fortune.
yeah. Her grandparents are the ones who did the monument, who
Wow.
purchased it.
Yeah,
Uh,
because it was so ornate. And when I saw her sitting there, and then she had the parasol, and she had her hat, and you could see any jewelry and the pattern on her dress. It was like, oh my gosh, and I don't know. I guess they probably put something around her because people were probably, um, touching her or doing something to her.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
they could have wanted to preserve, the
Yeah.
statue from the elements too. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think that was put on in the grandparents or the parents' lifetimes because I
Yeah.
think that's not glass. I think it's
Yeah.
plastic
Oh my gosh.
encasement around her. So I think it was
Wow.
probably put up later. I mean, this isn't the only scary one, but I mean, there's just too many to mention. I mean, like I think I had mentioned to you before, we used to hang out in cemeteries and have a picnic. I mean, just to see the old monuments, just to see the the feel the creepiness, or even feel the love that you could feel from some positive energy, because
Mhm.
there's positive energy in cemeteries too.
Well, they used to sit and eat with the grandmas and the aunts that were buried. Let's have lunch. Okay.
Exactly. Yes, okay,
Oh
we're a
my
little
gosh.
odd, but yes. My granddaughters want to do it so bad because I've told them about picnicking in the cemetery and they want to do it. So
Oh my
I'll,
gosh.
I'll be taking them to some of the nicer ones in Chicago and taking them for a picnic.
Well, I remember seeing some of the graves, and the one that got me the most was the reclining lady. She
Oh,
also was encased, and I'm like, oh man, I don't know. You're
I'd
gonna have to like take a picture and then carve it from that. I'm like, I don't think so.
I'd have to I'd have to research it, but there is, and I think it's in a Springfield cemetery. I think. There's a little boy he was paralyzed in life in his lifetime, and he's actually the monument to him is him flying out.
From the wheelchair.
And I'm trying to.
Oh,
I
oh.
think it might be in Springfield or it's somewhere more rural than Chicago, but I remember that being so the story was so sad, but the fact that he overcame his illness when he died and he was able to fly, you know,
Yeah.
finally out of the wheelchair that he lived in his whole life. It
I
was
think that's pretty famous because I've seen it
yes,
several
I just
times.
can't remember. I mean, it's killing me. I know it's not Chicago. I know it's not Chicago because I know my Chicago cemeteries, but it
Mhm.
was very, very interesting
And
to
it's like bronze or
yes,
something. It's just
yeah, yeah.
gorgeous. So, you used to sing to the babies that were buried in the graveyard. When
Oh,
what I did be pre-pandemic was that let me go, is that I would go in and go to the baby group and go to the teenagers because the teenagers' graves had a lot of energy that was really, really tough. And so I would sit and clear the energy completely, and then anoint the grave. I am a minister, by the way. Anoint the grave and just take that out because it's not necessarily the person that died. It's the grief that comes in with the people that are grieving and visit the grave. And so I try to get that out. We have in Poway, we have a graveyard, a cemetery, where there's actually the shadow people are all over on the fringe in one little corner, and people come in and say, oh, there's I know, and they can see them run or walk or whatever on this one side. And so, we try to, you know, do soul rescues and clear that energy out. If we have a minute, I remember taking some people, and this one girl so kept having somebody, maybe her name was Christy or something, talking to her all the time, and I was leading the group and stuff, and she'd always say, Christy, I know Christy wants us to find her, and on and on and on. And finally I said, hold on, Christy is showing me that she's by the big spigot that away, and you'll find her right next to it. And so I hear, here she is. So we ended up that night going over there, and she had her grave and her mother's grave, but her mother hadn't passed yet.
oh,
And I said, her mother's going to pass pretty soon, but there's this energy here that's really, really intense. I'm going to actually heal it. So clear, and I'm going to heal this area. And the person was standing and new to the, group, just somebody that wanted to be there. And the lady that was trying to communicate and somebody else. And as I went and started this big clearing, that lady fell over. She said, oh my gosh, it just hit me. And
oh,
I said, you're manipulating energy. And what better to do than just clear the graves and just kind of bring in that peace and love in, instead of the people that are, very crying, because they can come back constantly or year annually or whatever. And then we actually had a group of people that would go and sit, and they wouldn't leave the grave for like 3 days. We're open 24 hours a day, So, anyway, scary stuff in cemeteries, that's for sure.
That is true. Now, I bet that most people on here did not know that the first recorded. Oh, Kate, that is interesting. I'm not nervous in a cemetery either. If I feel something dark, it might unnerve me, but I'm not nervous.
Right.
um, Not a lot of people know that the first recorded serial killer happened in Chicago. Now, thank goodness he was not originally from Chicago. We don't have to claim that. But he came to Chicago after he flunked out of, or I shouldn't say flunked out of, he kind of left under uh, undesirable circumstances. He was he was becoming a doctor, but he had more fun tormenting and mutilating
Yeah.
cadavers than he did actually working on patients. His name was H. Holmes. And there's actually several books about him. He's the first known serial killer in the United States. And he was from, or did his most of his killing in Chicago. He actually got the property that he built, the murder castle, which was his home, by killing, yes, H. Holmes, by killing the pharmacist and his wife who owned the property, told people that they took ill, and then they sold him the drugstore and things. But no, he killed them to get their property. And then he built this castle-like structure. And he was so shrewd and so duplicitous that he had bought a giant walk-in vault from a bank company. And he had it installed in the house, but he built the ornate room around it, and then he didn't pay them for it. And when they said, you either give us the money or we're taking the vault, he said, go ahead and try, but if you damage one piece of wood or anything while you try and get it out, then I'll sue you. So that they ended up just walking away from this $3,000 or $4,000 piece of property because there was no way to get it back. But he also, within this murder castle, he built these death chamber rooms. No, this is during the World's Fair of what was it, 1893, the Chicago World's Fair. That he actually built this torture chamber so that he could lure people who were visiting the World's Fair there, so he could kill them because they weren't from Chicago. A lot of people traveled from all over the world.
Yeah. Who's going to miss them?
Right.
You
Well,
know?
we didn't know exactly where they were staying. It's not like they had telephones and computers and things back then. It's 1893. But he built all these torture chambers within this house. There was a dungeon that was just completely a torture chamber, but a lot of the rooms had these pipe fittings, and he could put carbon monoxide or some kind of noxious gas in there and watch these people through a peephole that he had where he could slide something open and watch them, through glass, suffocate to death or try and get themselves out of the room. I mean, he did some vile things. And then if there was someone he really wanted to torture, there were trap doors in some of the rooms where he could send their bodies down through a trap door to the basement. And he had sulfuric acid and different things that he could yes, but it's hard for them to say anything about him being Jack the Ripper because at the time of the Jack the Ripper killings, he was actually enrolled in medical school and was attending classes. So that's why they don't think it's a possibility, but it's not, there's nothing that they can base solidly on it. And Jack the Ripper also is believed to have been covered up and protected because he was a member of the royal family. And not
Oh.
Yes, they believe that he was actually a member of the royal family, not heir directly to the throne, but he was They believe he was a member of the royal family who actually had a medical background too. But yeah, Jack the Ripper and H. Holmes, the timelines are near the same, but he couldn't have been killing in England when he was building his murder castle in Chicago. You know, he had, and or when he was right before he came to Chicago, when he was in medical school. There's
Is,
there's no dip in timeline that they can find where he could have gone for that length of time to England to do any killings.
is that still standing?
No, that's why I didn't bother asking you for a picture.
Oh, okay.
There's a like an artist rendering kind of thing, um, and kind of a grainy picture. But after he was finally found out, I mean, he killed many people, um, including his partner in crime. Um, so and he, you know, because he wanted his hands on the partner's daughter,
Mm.
who he took her and her young brother. Yes, it's a post office on 63rd now. Yes, it is, and the post office is that's part of where it was going to go once we talked about his
Oh,
murder house. Is the no, it's fine.
uh,
The post office, dogs don't want to go near there. Dogs bark in the presence of the post office there. Workers see things moving and feel a dark presence. People who go there to get their mail feel a dark presence. It's the building itself. I mean, it was several decades before when they, you know, built the post office away from, you know, from this, but it's a piece of land that is tainted. Before the post office was built, after someone had torched, they believe it was one of the relatives of one of his victims who torched the murder castle, which is what it was known as. It burned to the ground. And, you know, then they demolished what was left of the ruins. And, but people could, when walking by that field, they could hear voices screaming from the ground.
oh, Lord.
Yeah. And and none of those voices, none of those entities, nothing left. They just built the post office over it.
Right.
So instead of it being a hallowed burial ground for the victims, it's now, you know, it's kind of a prison for them because something else is built on them. They can't rest. It's, you know, a loud, noisy post office. I think I'd be pissed.
Do they have any idea how many victims?
Um, God, I didn't even think to pull up the number of victims. He had so many, including I said he actually kidnapped. That's where I was before. He kidnapped his. He killed his partner, and he lied to the partner's wife, and he actually kidnapped or took the daughter and the son, and they believe he may have raped the daughter repeatedly. She was a young teenager. Um, Eventually, their bodies were found in one of the rooming houses because he was traveling all over the country, you know, hiding from the law and hiding from their mother, and you know, sending weird letters, you know, to her about, you know, them needing to protect the children, and he was just warped and demented.
Really?
They found the children. I believe the little boy had been strangled. I can't remember how the daughter died, but he just killed them, and he was actually brought back and tried and hung in Chicago for his
Oh,
crime.
okay.
And
Mm.
I believe it was shortly after he was executed that the house, a mysterious fire broke out, and the whole place was burned to the ground. So, um,
Oh
there you
my
go.
gosh.
Yeah.
27
Well,
plus.
I knew it was a lot because a lot of them were from the, like I said, the World's Fair.
Right.
He took a lot of, he even focused sometimes on the, you know, there was an elderly woman who was traveling. No, I shouldn't say elderly. My God, she's like 10 years older than us, but she's a woman in her 60s, traveling to the World's Fair and was sending postcards and things to her, like nieces and stuff. I don't think she had any actual children herself. Um, but you know, when he would find somebody who didn't have a, you know, someone looking for them or whatever, those are the people he would put into the torture rooms because he did have rooms where people weren't killed. People
Oh my God.
direct communication with their family, or who didn't live that far outside of Chicago. I think he picked his victims.
You know, that just, like you're anywhere, anybody comes up and says, oh, like, do you have any brothers or sisters? I've got a zillion of them. They're all like police officers, detectives. I mean, oh my
Yeah.
God.
Well, he sent letters to the police and taunted them too. I
Oh
mean,
my gosh.
but he used to do a lot of this. Some of this, like he killed his partner. You know why he killed him? For the insurance money.
Oh
He
my
put a
gosh.
big policy on him. That's how he got caught. It was an insurance fraud investigator who actually caught him as a serial killer, because even the people who were staying long term at his place, he would take insurance out on. And then,
Oh my gosh.
when they were found dead or whatever, or they couldn't figure out how they died, if they were poisoned or whatever, he'd let some bodies be found that he had insurance policies on, just like,
Mm.
stealing from the old man and woman.
I wanted to put Kate's up. Her aunt was followed by Jack the Ripper.
That is scary. Do you know how long ago, like what time frame he was stalking her? Or following, I shouldn't say stalking.
Yeah. Scary
That
stuff.
would be interesting.
And then, there are always those copycat people,
Yeah,
that to me is scary.
yeah. But a lot of his killings were for money. He would steal. Also, like if he had a wealthy older person there for the World's Fair, he'd kill them and steal their jewelry, steal the money they had on them. Because they didn't have credit cards or travelers checks or things.
Right.
People, you went on a long trip, you had a wad of cash.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe they had money belts back then.
They did have money belts. But
Yeah.
it's
That's crazy.
yeah, it's interesting, but he just had a fascination and a morbid curiosity about mutilating bodies. I mean, he was the best in his class in cadaver school in autopsies.
Hmm.
He enjoyed it so much. Others would be
Oh
good.
my God, that's right.
Yeah,
There's a big red flag right there.
yeah.
Ugh,
Others
he
would be
really
good
loves being
at
in there
life,
cutting up stuff.
you know.
Oh, no.
Yeah, probably
Oh
looking
my
for
God.
fava beans and a nice Chianti. I don't know, but
Oh,
yeah, he was a very sick and twisted individual. He
oh
really
my
was.
gosh.
Uh,
It's just another thing where all this really crazy, terrible, horrible stuff happens, and there's the energy there. That's it could be there forever. I think that, when the hauntings go way, way back, there's like something really horrific. And one place I do want to go is I do want to check out some Civil War battlefields, because that I believe would be where a lot of activity would be.
Yeah, I have some battlefield stories. I told you my dad, we couldn't take a normal vacation like anybody else. Our vacations were, let's go to a Civil War battlefield. And I think he hit almost every one that he could have possibly hit, every year. There are pictures and 8 millimeter film of my brother Billy and I and my brother Rick on every daggum cannon, you know, out there on all these battlefields. There's a picture of us on the cannons waving.
Oh my gosh. I did want to bring this up. Wana Big Wani. Hi. You said the scariest thing that ever happened to you in a graveyard was passing some gravestones and you heard some powwow music and then a scream in your ear. That is crazy. But I want to tell you the first seance and of course, my family is Yaqui, and we have reservations all over Southern California and into Mexico, was where my family is from. And so we always have the powwow and all of that. But I went to a seance, my first seance, and there was like channeling. You didn't see anything, but I'm going to tell you, there was a lady, she had to be in her 80s, a frail little lady, and out of her came a booming you knew it was a Native American male voice,
Oh,
booming, and his chief, whatever it was, and that was like just very scary that you would see this come out of that lady. There's like no way this deep male voice that would, and it was chanting and talking and all that stuff. And sometimes in the seance, they would hear the drumming and the music going around. So there must have been somebody there or something already there previously, that wanted to communicate. So when you are someone who's intuitive, and even it catches people off guard that have never had a psychic experience too. They don't know that they can get information or have something like this happen. That you were the one that they knew. Hey, let's. And I think if they screamed, that they were trying to scare you off.
I think so too.
Yeah, scary stuff. Oh my goodness. Everybody's own ghost stories are absolutely fantastic. We need to write a book. That
Yeah.
is crazy. Um, Going down to the new comments. Hi, Rhonda. How are you?
Hi, Rhonda.
Oh, she's 88. Kate's aunt is 88. There.
Yep, I see that. Yes.
So, anyway, scary stuff. And, the more people I meet, the more tragedy or some kind of thing happens. My brother-in-law and sister-in-law were murdered, and then just this week, within a week, I had two things brought to me of these people, and the people I know and their relatives. Two young men committed suicide. So there's always stuff all over the place. And you know, we do need to uplift the vibration and make sure the people have been transmuted over to the other side, and clear this grief and this stuff out. That the world, especially with the beginning of the pandemic, I think everybody that is set down to see all the crazy stuff, killer hornets, everything that happened, that you go, what happened to the energy in the world? People just lose their minds? And so I think that we need more light workers. Let me see. Hi, Janelle. Let's see what she's on Molokai. And Molokai has the drums and the flaming lights of the night marchers. Oh my gosh, wouldn't that be something to see
Oh, that
and
would.
and hear them? Oh my gosh.
I would be interested in that.
Yeah, I'm up. Janelle, how many people can fit in
How
your
many? Yeah,
house?
how
We're
many?
taking
Oh,
hands.
we're bringing our sideshow with. Um,
Yeah.
I would like to say to everybody, especially people who have either been to or live in Chicago. Next week we're doing our part 3, but I would love in the comments maybe if you have a specific Chicago tale that you want talked about. I mean, there's so many, there's hundreds of hauntings. I mean, our whole show could be nothing but Chicago ghost stories, and it would last a year. It's, but I would really like to know, because I'd like to hit on something that you're really interested in too. You could put it in the comments. Just, you know, say that you want to hear about the ghosts of Navy Pier, or, a specific cemetery. We'd love for you to tell us something you'd be interested in.
We need reservations for 3 right now.
Yes.
Um, let's see. Kate said this. Kate, do our family members and loved ones know we are at their graves? And people will, most, I think, metaphysical people or light workers will say yes. But I'd like to tell you my take on it. Um, I really do feel like time is going on it right now all together at the same time. So no time. Everything's happening at the same time. And how do I know this? I do past lives where I go in and talk to the people. And I've gotten a code name. I went into a past life and got a code name and brought it out. So when you're thinking that there they are and there their soul is, are they always there with you? I'm going to say not always. I think they're busy doing other things. They may have reincarnated. They're busy in other places. I do feel like that. I think everybody has this deja vu moments or this moments of feeling loved or someone's around. And I really think it's bigger than what people think. And I think that if you go to a grave, do send the message that you're there and all of that, because in another life or wherever, they will get that hug, you know. So that's my take on it, because I've experienced, going into a past life, and that was validated because I came back with the code word that the person wanted, and so a little bit of Harry Houdini here, I've got to say. That
Oh,
was an exciting time.
Michelle put up a good one. Congress Hotel. That is ripe with hauntings. Yes, Michelle, I will definitely discuss the tower or the Congress Hotel. That's a creepy building. I don't think I ever want to go back in.
Oh, Kate, you're right. I have heard that famous poem of the Native American. Yeah. A lot of times I really wonder if they really wrote that poem. So, but,
It was
but I,
by a white person pretending. It was not.
um, and here is right, and it's energy, isn't Janelle? It's an energy, thought, and intention. In Wiccan, intention is magic. That's where the magic is. And so if you have that intention, you're going to connect or whatever. And so whenever you guys go around and you get this feeling or a hug or warm or love or get happy, it could be in another lifetime that somebody's there. So I know it's all confusing and all of that, but truly when we go on the other side, we're going to know what's going on.
That is true.
Thank you, Dee. Hi, Dee. How are you? We were telling Chicago ghost stories, and we're getting a roster of ones right now that we can tell, because we're going to do a part 3, Chicago Ghost Stories Part 3, next Saturday. This one was quite something with the murderers and stuff.
Yes.
Oh my God. But that's part of it. That's part of when you find ghosts and when you're chasing ghosts and stuff. There's always a story of what happened and who was killed there and who is there in spirit. So,
And I
and
might be, it might just be my opinion, but I think that the more horrific or tragic the death is, maybe the more of the residual that is left, because you're taken so quickly or so horrifically, and the pain and the anger and the rage you feel is just got you right there.
Mm-hmm. And grief is extremely hard, and it doesn't always, the energy, but then when you have somebody keep revisiting it and going to the grave again, or going to the house where it happened, or going to that haunted house where something tragic happened. People love going and visiting where, like the Eastland, when that went over, you get looky-loos, but you may have somebody bringing in grief that lost somebody, and so that needs to be cleared.
Yes.
And it's nothing. People have to grieve, but some people will go forever. Who was it, the guy that died, you guys, that had the lady, was it a lady brought a red rose to his grave? Who's
I
the
know.
Don Juan guy?
You know about Rudolph Valentino?
Yes.
Yeah, that was
Yes.
supposedly that was Paula Negre who did that.
Oh, really?
She claimed she was his fiance, and she passed out dramatically at his casket. But a lot of his friends said she was, basically smoking crack. She was not his, they had a fling, but she was not his fiance. But others say that they were dating and they were, a couple. And some say that, his first marriage was a lavender wedding, that him and his wife, she was a lesbian and he was gay. So,
Oh my.
yeah.
Well, nonetheless, There was that always going,
Yes,
always going
very
to the grave.
echoes.
Holy cow. Some florists did well,
Oh,
but I think it's great too. If people got back into making things more a celebration as they can, when they can, at the graves, and people going in and clearing that energy. Anything that's negative, anything, whatever, and it keeps the dark stuff out of the cemeteries because things happen. I told you before that in Old Town San Diego, Janine, who was a paranormal investigator down there, she does ghost tours, but they lit a cigarette and they put it on top of this tombstone, and the ghost, the spirit, would take a drag on it, the smoke, take a drag on it, and the smoke would go. So what's doing that? you know, for sure.
definitely.
So look at Cathis is here. Hi, Cathis.
Look at this.
Um, we're past our time. Oh my
We
goodness.
are. We are.
Oh gosh, you guys, thank you for each one of you for coming in and listening to the stories. And Cara, you are just wonderful. And you guys, Cara does have a tip link. Let me put it there. A couple bucks here and there. Um, and you're a great storyteller.
Thank
You
you.
blow me away with the history and the stuff that you know, and then bringing in always this little twist from your personal experience, being in Chicago or the Appalachian Mountains. If you guys missed the other shows, go listen to them, go watch them. And so we're going to do Chicago next week too.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
And we've been asked about the McKenzie State Recreation Area, and we've been asked about the Congress Hotel. And the Congress Hotel, I did have that one on my radar. Michelle is right. That place is ripe with murders, suicides, accidental deaths, tragedy. It's yeah. People have, there are hauntings. There are certain rooms that are haunted, so that's a good one to go to next week.
Let me get this last thing from Kate. Kate, when it's tragic and unexpected, don't they get confused sometimes and don't know to cross over? There's a lot of different reasons they don't cross over. We've encountered a man that is waiting for his wife.
Yes.
It's like he's good with it. I'm just going to wait for her. She's going to come here. I'm going to take her. And we have people that just don't even know what happened, and we have people that are super scared and they don't want to cross, like I kind of know this is my grave and I'm not going to go anywhere else. So soul rescue can, be, very varied, a lot of different things. We had a very angry guy. And unfortunately, the girl that wanted to cross him over was very much an empath, and she was sobbing and he was angry, and I said, never again, never again am I going to mix this up. And the guy, actually, the people were walking to her because she was sobbing, and the now spirits that are angry will pick out the weakest link. Okay, so FYI on that. And so there was a lady, and the graves are a little bit, not smooth. You're gonna get some bumps and have to be careful walking. So a lady had a cane. Not all the time did she use a cane, but because we were on uneven ground, and she was actually pushed. And the couple behind her saw her as she got pushed from behind, and she didn't have to go all the way to the ground, but she got pushed, and she was yelling. She got pushed. Everybody saw that she got pushed. And so you have to be careful. Crossing souls, if anybody wants to do it, you need to know what you're doing. Need to have protections in. You have to have a psychic, please, with you to communicate. Okay. A medium, somebody that can communicate, and don't do it for fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, please. And the other thing I want to say about crossing people, everybody says something like, Cara, like, go to the light, right? Please don't do that. Please don't do that. Archangel Michael, or the mother, say her name, come and take them over to the other side, because I've experienced portals. And who's to say that something opens and they go, oh, here's a light
Yeah, go.
right into hell?
Yeah,
So please let the other side, the angelics, the ancestors, God, Jesus, whoever the higher power is, direct that they go with them, that they
yeah.
come in and they take them where they need to go. Okay.
Oh, I agree.
Because it's so like everybody just like go for the light, see the light, see the light. No, just let them be taken by someone. They're more, the odds are better that when they come and they get them and they talk to them and they take them over. So that's that. My goodness, we got to go.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So you guys,
Thank you
thank you so
guys.
much for watching. It was so great. We'll be here Saturday at 6 p.m. Pacific time. And what time is that for you, Cara?
8 p.m. Central.
Okay,
So
there we go.
Chicago time, 8 p.m.
Okay. So we'll see you then. Thank you guys so much for watching. And you guys take care and have a good rest of the weekend. And that was your orb I just saw.
Oh, see now.
Woo! It was behind you. Unless it was a moth. All
Oh, I got it.
right, you guys. Bye bye.